What is your "this is not happening" story? Crapping my pants right before a final. In college, I liked to study on campus. That way I didn't have much distractions. About 45 minutes before my final, I trusted the wrong fart and poo came out. I was near a bathroom, so I ran in and tried to clean up as best I could. At this point I realized it was bad enough. No amount of wiping was going to not make me smell like crap. This wasn't some random class where I'd never see my classmates again. This was a 3000 level class in my major, meaning my classmates were people I have and would be seeing and talking to at least a few times every week until I graduated. I felt like I had two options. One, miss the final and fail the class, or two, embarrass the frick out of myself in front of my friends and peers. I soon realized neither were options. But with only 30 minutes before the final started, I really doubted me being able to make home to shower and get back on time. I lived in a house about 10 minutes walking distance from campus, so I decided to just run like my social life and future career were on the line. I very well may have set a world record that day for the fastest man with crap in his pants. I never forget the feeling of my cheeks sliding back and forth as I ran faster than I ever have before. I almost expect to wake up from this nightmare, wishing this wasn't real. To sum up the story, I actually made it back to school in time for my final. I did smell stinking like sweat during the final, since I had to run as absolutely fast as I could to make it back to campus on time. But I'll take smelling like I just came from the gym over smelling like literal crap any day. In my senior year of high school, I was at my girlfriend's house alone. Things happened. Afterwards we decided to take a shower together in a non-sexual way. Bubbles ensue. Lip singing was done. Fun was had. Then all of a sudden we hear her stepdad, who had evidently come home without us noticing, yelling at us to get the frick out, as it was blatantly obvious we were in the shower together. We scramble out of the shower as he's bashing the door down. I'm having a panic attack. My girlfriend's acting like it'll be fine. My clothes are thrown around the hallway leading to the bathroom, so I have to emerge from the bathroom in nothing but a towel. The stepdad and my girlfriend's older sister are staring at me. It should now be mentioned that her stepdad is a bodyguard for a relatively big act for a performer in Las Vegas who I won't name. So he's a very large man and I'm a very not large man. He's in my face screaming how he's gonna rip my throat out and I need to get the frick out and all that crap. I'm all yes sir while still flipping crap. I get dressed and he all but physically throws me out, and I accidentally leave my keys in his stepdaughter's room. I tell him this and he says I'll bring them out when I want. I'm outside his house dripping wet for 30 minutes until my girlfriend's older sister brings me my keys and I leave. She was grounded for 2 months. Every time I hear one of these stories I just think how much I'd rather my daughter be in my home, safe, with reliable birth control, than sneaking around somewhere else. Being a couple hundred feet away when the bombs went off in Boston, we flipped a coin and went for a meal rather than check out the marathon finish line. Being a fatty saved us from some serious crap. Walking for miles and miles away from downtown with sirens all around for hours was surreal. I shat my pants during a physics final. Thought it was just another intense fart, but it just splooshed out. I felt it warming my thighs. I sort of sat there for a few minutes in horrified shock. Then I ran out in sort of a half sideways crab shuffle, hoping that none dripped out of my pants. The human body is truly a beautiful work of art. All 3 of my proposal plans backfired on me. We were on vacation for our anniversary in Vegas. First plan was at dinner at the Bellagio. I was about to pull the ring out when they sat a party of 20 people next to us. We had a nice table with only a few people around. Then it just got a bit noisy and the party still had people joining, so there was a lot of people walking around our chairs. Next plan was after dinner at the fountains. But the song that was playing was Time to Say Goodbye, which isn't really the best message for a proposal. I called the Ferris wheel and rented a private cabin earlier in the day while she was sleeping. The lady took all my credit card info and said I was all set and should receive confirmation shortly. We walk up to the desk and I say I have a reservation and gave my name. Lady couldn't find my name, so she directed me to the office. I went white. My girlfriend thought I was going to faint. Of course the lady who took my reservation went home for the day and there was no record of it. She never sent the confirmation or charged my card. So my next concern was this lady now had my CC info and was going to start going on a spending spree. The desk gave us comp tickets. We get in line and a few people ahead of us is a couple. They are extremely intoxicated and arguing. Of course we get stuck in the cabin with them. Halfway through the ride they are making out and dry humping the rest of the way. We finally get back to the hotel and she flops on the bed. I go in the bathroom to try and figure how I'm going to propose now. I pull the ring out to hopefully get some inspiration and pull out some confetti from the Cirque show we went to earlier. I walk over to the bed and go, hey, I found some confetti from the show you can put in your scrapbook. She grabs the confetti and the ring. Then she starts crying and I ask. She says yes. We get married next year. I honestly thought it was going to end with you exiting the bathroom to find her asleep on the bed. So, one day my mom informed me that in a few days she was going to get a surgery to fix her C-section scar. She said it would be a very simple and would only need a week to recover. When she came home from the surgery, it was much more than just a stomach surgery. I'm talking about liposuction on her thighs. The fat was then implanted into her butt and face, a tummy tuck, and a nipple reduction. IDK how she thought I wouldn't notice, but anyways. Flash forward to that night at about 3 in the morning. I wake up to her screaming and howling in pain. She was on a heavy dose of painkillers and basically had a bad reaction that caused her to have a blocked stomach and become extremely constipated. It was 3 in the morning and she was literally screaming in pain, all while letting out these disgusting long farts. She's shaking, yelling that something isn't right and crying for me to take her to the hospital. I called her doctor's number and he tells me she needs an enema ASAP. I gave my mom an enema. It was totally my this is not happening moment, but it was obviously an emergency, and after all, she did give birth to me. Just gotta do what you gotta do. When I was in elementary school, my sister and I were going on the same field trip to a museum. The bus ride was going to be pretty long. We both had our own CD players, but we had only one Ilmich CD. Since she was older, 5th grade versus 3rd grade, we both assumed she would get the CD. While we're walking to the bus, my mom reveals that my dad burnt the CD so we could both have a copy. I literally danced like an idiot in front of my whole class the whole way to the bus, smiling until my cheeks hurt. It might be the happiest I've ever been my whole life. I couldn't comprehend the fact that we magically had 2 of the same CD. After reading that, all I can picture is a little macaroni noodle dancing in front of some broccoli. I'm really happy for you, man. I was in an elevator, alone, when the power went out. My first reaction is to freak out. I think at any moment the elevator is going to go crashing to the ground floor. I frantically press the call button. It does nothing, so I call 911 and get told help is on the way. 10 minutes later the power comes back on. The elevator starts to move and it stops and the doors open. Something about the power outage must have damaged the system because it is not aligned. I can just see the floor at about neck level. I try to hoist myself up but I can't get a grip because the floor is linoleum and slippery. I later learned that this is exactly what you aren't supposed to attempt while stuck in an elevator. A couple minutes later the firemen arrive and are able to override the elevator controls so I can walk out. Oddly, the whole experience made me somewhat less afraid of elevators, because the whole time I was freaking out thinking it was going to fall or something else horrible was going to happen, and it didn't. Yo, butt could have been chopped in half. When I was 11 I came home from school like normal, ate dinner, watched some TV, the usual. About 8 o'clock there's a knock on the door. I answer it and it's the police. Turns out while I was in school my dad had taken my mother by knife point out to a set of woods way out in the country, had a grave dug, broke a board over her knee so she couldn't run away. She ended up talking him out of killing her and going home. I spent 5 hours that night oblivious. Then boom, everything changed. I was 13 and wore a wristwatch. The watch needed repair and I went to the local place for help. I'd been there multiple times. It was run by an old man and his wife. and they had always given my family good service while being reasonably priced. I was with a friend, and she stood at the counter while I sat in a tall chair next to the door. The next thing I know, someone is pushing into me so that I am against the counter. I am uncomfortable, so I look up and there is a gun in my face, with a dude in a ski mask behind it. I look across the room and the shopkeeper's wife, who was probably like 80 even at the time, has a gun to her head as well. Long story short, no one was hurt. They were robbed, but the guys got caught almost immediately, as they did not know the area and started running toward the police station. The shop owner had hit a silent alarm when they first came in, and all stolen items were recovered. I just remember when I looked up and saw that barrel of the gun in my face, I thought it was a joke, which makes no sense, but I think my young teen mind just couldn't comprehend it. I distinctly remember thinking that I should turn to the owner and josh him about his friends. Then I thought, wait, no, that's a gun in your face. Nothing about this is a joke. Fairly surreal. My senior year of college, I finally worked up the nerve to ask the cute boy from my lit class out on a date. I was so nervous as I left the house to meet him that I forgot where the door was and ran full force into a window. I didn't break my nose, but I did lose my 2 front teeth. Of course, I texted him to tell him I was sick and couldn't make it, but it was at the start of midterms and I wouldn't be able to see a dentist until the end of the week. I had to face him in lit class 2 days later looking like an extra from Deliverance. As you'd imagine, we never made up the date. This is in a rom-com level. My then girlfriend ran through a glass window and severed her anterior muscles and tendons to the bone on her leg, and all I could do was helplessly watch from the locked front door as blood pooled around her. She was running to the door to let me in. When my friend's mom was driving us back from a skiing trip and the car went off of the highway and rolled into a ravine. After the car settled, no one was seriously hurt. Thankfully, I remember looking around and thinking, is this seriously happening right now? I just saw your username and felt the same way. My dad woke me up yelling, your little brother was hit by a car. Get dressed, we're going to the hospital. I was half awake getting dressed and we jumped into his car and sped down the street where the accident happened. Literally at the end of my street, my little brother was taking a left on a street and a Mercedes sped by but didn't make it past him. Smashed him and his bike head on and he flipped over the car, breaking his arm. Bike was hardly messed up but the grill and the Mercedes was smashed to bits. Poor kid was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. Got to the hospital hardly being able to grasp the situation. Came into the ER and there he was. Forearm in the shape of an S. Said he could still feel pain and they kept giving him kid doses of morphine and then started giving him adult doses. After they knocked him out, guy came into the room, put his arm between his legs and pulled and twisted. Straightened it right up. Doc said he couldn't feel anything but his body will react. He was laying there eyes open, moaning as his arm was being put back into place. Scared the heck out of me. That was the first time I had seen my father cry. After he came to, he realized his cast was on and asked if they fixed his arm. We told him yeah, it's fine. He picked his head up and goes, yes. My best friend and I were driving through a crappy town we lived by, past the local hospital. It was dark and raining. I saw a man walking across the road ahead of us. He stopped in the middle. When I went to drive past him, he suddenly dove in front of my car and I ran him over. I pulled over and called 911. I didn't want to even look at him. I assumed his mangled corpse would scar me for life. While I was talking to 911, my friend says, he got up, he walked up to my car and tried the door handle, but I hit the lock button just in time. That's when I noticed he was wearing a hospital gown. He turns from my car and starts running down the middle of the road and strips his hospital gown off. I am giving this play-by-play to the 911 operator, telling her he is bare butt naked running down the main street of this city. When the cops showed up, he had already jumped on the hood of an elderly couple's car down the road. We walked down to where that commotion was happening to try to give some kind of report to the cops so we wouldn't be accused of a hit and run. The guy still wasn't even close to dead even after this second attempt. They were trying to wrangle his wet, naked, crazy butt onto a stretcher which he managed to squirm off of. They had to tase him. They got him loaded up and before you knew it the crowd had dispersed. The cops never took a statement from us. Nothing was reported on the news or in the papers. They just towed away the elderly couple's car, washed the blood off the street, and called it a night. Last year was going on vacation to Key West with my boyfriend. It was in February, so it was snowing a little. We boarded our flight and noticed it was taking a really long time to take off. Then we hear an announcement that we will not be taking off as planned and a plane had skidded off the runway at LaGuardia. We were literally about to take off when this happened and had no idea this was the start of 24 hours of heck. Our flight kept getting more and more delayed as they needed to make sure the runway was safe. I think we finally reboarded around 7 PM, to which they had to de-ice the plane, which took some extra time. Then there was another announcement that we had to get off the plane again. Forget the reason for this one. So, 2 hours later we finally get ready to take off again and they have to go through the whole de-icing process again. Yet as we were about to take off, another announcement said that it had taken so long that the pilots could no longer under law fly as they were on for 2 minute hours. They had to have known this would happen before we even boarded. So, we get off the plane. Again. They finally managed to find pilots available to fly the plane and we take off. We had a connection in Atlanta we knew we would miss, so we booked a hotel before we took off from NYC. We landed at Atlanta airport somewhere around 12:01 AM. We called our hotel to see if they had any taxi recommendations and no one answered the phone at the hotel. We kept calling over and over and over again, so we just got a bad vibe. Not to mention no taxis were even around at that time of night and we didn't know exactly where we were going. We then go to at least try to get our bags so we could clean up or something. Our bags were already in Key West. Delta offered us one of those care packages with the crappy shirt made out of tissue paper and some toiletries. We try to find food. Only thing open is Burger King and they are out of everything but pie. We eat Hershey pie from BK. It was freezing in the ATL airport and we had no warm clothes as we were on our way to Florida. We had to sleep on the floor. It was so cold that we actually would look forward to the janitor coming around with his floor cleaner because it produced some heat. It was so pathetic. We finally get on a connecting flight about 8 AM. So basically our flight was supposed to take off from LaGuardia at 11 AM the day before and we didn't take off from Atlanta until 8 AM the next morning. TLDR, worst traveling experience ever. I work for an airport transportation company, so whenever customers be about having to wait like 20 minutes I just want to say, you have no freaking idea. Complained to Delta and we both got $100 gift cards of our choice. Not that great since we lost 1 day of our vacation and no refunds for anything. Because we're Delta Airlines, and life is a freaking nightmare. It was our first girl. She was preemie and had an infection on her lungs. She never came home. She was in NICU and sent both of us home. So every day we visit her, since it is NICU, we have to wash our hand for 15 seconds. This happens for 81 days. Same routine. I get an early morning call that she is suffering, so come fast. We know something is wrong. I insist on washing the hands for 15 seconds and enter the room to see the nurse holding her in hands instead of in the enclosure. I was dumbfounded, can't cry, just a stern look. I can't believe that I can do nothing to make her come back. I still remember her every time I wash my hands. P.S. We have 2 girls with us now. We are happy and fortunate. Ever hear the saying never trust a fart? I had food poisoning and was bedridden at work. Emergency services had to be there. I sat up to fart and what do you know? Diarrhea came out instead and soaked into the mattress. I carefully crab walked to the bathroom and cleaned myself up. Found a trash bag and threw my underwear and sheets in it and walked to the dumpster. Well, the smoke pit was next to the dumpster and all my coworkers were out there. Walking by them carefully trying to conceal the bag, they asked, "Hey, did you crap yourself?" There was no hiding it. I got fired once for walking out of a shift at Subway. When my coworkers told the manager I had crapped myself, he called me laughing and said I could come back to work if I wanted. I decided not to. Last year my dog had a tumor above his front leg that needed to be removed. He was 17 years old, so the surgery was risky, but we decided to go through with it after the vet said they felt he was healthy enough. He had the surgery and I was very relieved he came out okay. He was kind of wonky from the anesthesia. but the vet said he would be like that for a day or two, especially when adjusting to the medication. I was staying at my mom's house with him during this whole time, and the second night after the surgery she was not going to be home until really late because of her caregiver job. I stayed in her room with him. He usually slept next to her bed and watched Netflix. I was relieved because he wasn't as restless as he was before, and because I hadn't slept the night before I ended up dozing off. I woke up to my mom, who had just come home, saying, "Edgar, Snoopy isn't moving." I jumped out of bed and went to his side. He looked like he was just sleeping, with his head resting on his paw, but he was not breathing and I could feel his body getting cold and stiff. It was the worst feeling ever, waking up from a peaceful dream to my biggest nightmare of losing my best friend. I could not believe it because I thought after the surgery he would be okay and I would have more time with him, but sadly it was not the case. My gym got hit with a tornado while a friend and I were lifting. My gym's really large and such, there is lots of noise and music blasting, so we didn't hear anything. All of a sudden the power cuts out and we look out the window and see raining flying straight sideways. Then I hear this loud groan as the wall we're standing next to collapses. We managed to run and get out from under it as part of the roof started collapsing and everyone was screaming. Since I'm a former army medic, I started trying to help any injured, but miraculously no one was seriously injured or killed. Goodness, probably one of the last places you'd want to be inside of when that happens. Scary stuff. I live in North Dakota, so we get some terrible storms here also. There's nothing geographically to stop the wind. We haven't had much snow like usual though, so no roofs caved recently, but growing up it wasn't unusual to see cars blown over, poles snapped, and grain silos trashed and twisted up. When we were RVing in Yellowstone, my husband didn't give enough clearance to open the side bay door 100% so I could do our electric and sewer hookups. The spaces were very tight. I tried to work around it and opened the door halfway and pulled the electric cord from a few feet away. The cord wrapped around the black tank, reed, pee and crap handle and pulled it open. The sound of the tank emptying was when my entire world faded away, knowing 40 gallons of sewage was about to spill onto our campsite and not being able to do anything about it as I watched, horrified. There was no time to maneuver, get the door fully unobstructed, and close the valve, and so we dumped a full tank of sewage in the middle of one of the most beautiful places in the world. Frick me. Couple years ago I was loading my van up with packages. I worked for FedEx, when suddenly a gunman comes in and starts shooting up the place. We all ran for our lives and he eventually shot himself. Nobody died thankfully, but I am still a bit shaken from it. Sounds like he went postal. My dad franchised a computer renaissance back when I was in elementary school. I love my dad and computers, so it was a treat for me to go hang out at his store during the day until my mom got off work and could take me home with her. One time I was sitting on one of the computers playing StarCraft and some lady and a man came in and started talking to me. The lady started saying how it looks like it is boring here and I could come to her daycare with her if I wanted to, all the while the man trying to make it sound like it was such a cool idea. So, until I thought about this story last year and actually asked my dad about it, I saw it in a different way. I used to think the man standing there with her was actually my dad saying how it is fine and I could go if I wanted instead of having to sit around at the store all day. When we talked about it, my dad basically said, what the heck, that would never have happened if I knew about it. So, this is just absolutely weird as crap. I'm starting to wonder with a hindsight is 20/20 kind of perspective if these two weirdos scoped me out over some unknown amount of time, knew my dad was the store owner, and plotted to try and kidnap me when he had his back turned. Thankfully, even as a little kid I thought, oh no freaking way is that gonna happen, and said no thanks, I'm fine, and kept turtling as an awful Terran player. I specifically remember them loitering around near the laptop cases my dad had set up near the front door, which made me feel awkward, so I closed the game and ran into the back room. Growing up, I never understood how both a woman and a man could work together to kidnap a child. Having so many aunts, I always assumed I could go for a woman for help because they were always so much better than men. I know that sounds odd, but now I know that it works both ways. When my love was at 30 weeks pregnancy, we went to the hospital for checkup appointment. We found that she had a low amniotic fluid. I thought alright, doctors should help with that. We stayed for a night and I set out to home in morning alone to get clothes and stuffs I needed. Halfway to home, she texted me and said you need to come back. I stopped, did U-turn, and drove fast as I can cause I know it was an emergency. When I arrive, nurses were running and getting me into delivery room. I immediately realized that she's going to have C-surgery. I discovered that baby heart rate was wild and dropping. There were 12 doctors plus 5 nurses. They dive in right away. After my arrival of 2 minutes ago, they did see. Blood was everywhere. Doctors were pulling her upper skin really hard. I didn't know that skin could stretch that far. And then my son came out. 5 NICU doctors worked on him right away. My son stopped breathing and heart rate was dropping still. Right front of me. Doctors were determined though. They wouldn't give up. Getting liquids out of lungs and do CPR. Finally he came back alive. TDLR. My son was born at 30 weeks, died, and resurrected. The following is an unembellished account of how I was 2 hours late to work. We were helping out with this big race thing that came through the area. The race started at our hotel, but the course was long because it involved biking and swimming and stuff. I was to be stationed at a beach somewhere down the road from the hotel. They had warned us how bad traffic might be, so we left a little early. We got to the hotel no problem, and began driving toward the beach. I should probably mention that I was in high school at the time, and my mom was driving me there. Anyway, it turned out that the only road that actually led to the beach was closed because people were racing on it. This caused a huge backup of cars that we got stuck in for at least half an hour. At this point I was already late and incredibly worried. Finally some cops helped direct us on a detour, which was basically them telling us to turn left and that somehow we'd end up back on the other side of the beach and be able to drive towards it. We attempted this using a GPS. We drove around the back roads for a while, and there things started to go bad. The road kept getting smaller and smaller, became 1 lane, then gravel, then dirt. Eventually we were left with a line of cars on a trail in the woods. Stopped. Like everyone else, I jumped out of the car and went to the front of the line to see what was up. Apparently there was a metal gate in the middle of the trail that was locked. We couldn't go around it because of the trees. The leaders of the caravan, a huge Hispanic family, were attempting to break through the gate with brute force. They obviously really wanted to watch this race. Not knowing what to do, and not wanting to get in trouble with the law, my mom and I turned around and with some effort managed to work our way backwards. By this time, the car was nearly out of gas, with a range of about 3 miles left on it. We thought we were doomed. Miraculously, we made it back to the cops and the closed road. We told them we had tried their detour and could not get through. I just wanted to get to work. Their suggestion? Walk. I think. No big deal. This is a race after all, so I can probably jog over to the beach. How far could it be? After a solid 15 minutes with not even a runner in sight, I got on my phone to see just how far away this place was. I hadn't even gone a tenth of the way yet. Jogging was impossible in the August heat and I just slowed to a walk on a closed road with no end in sight. It was around this point, nearly 2 hours after my shift started, that I had to think to myself, this is not happening. I was so going to get fired. In the end, I wound up hitchhiking the rest of the way on a golf cart. I was not fired, as everyone had experienced similar issues. I did not get paid enough for the amount of trouble I went through that day. Wednesday night, I had a car accident, and as I was making that left turn and that other car came into view, I didn't think it was going to happen, but it didn't. Bottom line, low speed crash, about 15 miles per hour, driver's side front quarter and hood buckled. I T-boned a Ford Explorer and damaged the driver's side doors and blew out of the tires. Both of us walked away. Car might be totaled out. Will be meeting with adjuster on Monday. 8-year car, 67,000 miles. Sigh. It was just another Monday evening. I was cooking dinner while my kids were outside playing. I was expecting my husband home from work any moment. The doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw 2 cops. I let them in, not thinking anything of it. One cop took my son aside while the other took me aside into the kitchen. She told me my husband had been killed in a car accident. I literally fell on the floor from the shock. The police were really nice. They stayed with us until family arrived. This happened over 15 years ago. I'll never forget that moment. Slowest D-lino lineman on the team, I managed to get a 20-yard sack on the QB. I didn't even know what happened until everyone was crowding around me cheering. Right on, man. There was a huge crowd of people downtown for the Christmas tree lighting one year. I had a walk signal, and I heard someone yell, "Don't cross." I thought it was the guy in the Mercedes who wanted to turn, and I was like, whatever. I promptly displayed my middle finger as I crossed. When I got to the other side of the street, a bright flashlight was pointed right at me. It was a cop, not the driver, who told me not to cross, and the cop, not the driver, that I flipped off. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.